You are listening to 600 Second Saga. Today's feature is Cataclysmic Irony by Ethan Hedman. 20 years pass at an agonizing pace when spent underground. Those who had descended into protective facilities waited in cramped quarters, knowing they may not survive the impending onslaught. Pessimists cursed the stupidity of war, global superpowers, and the figureheads that had created the conflict. Optimists clung to the ideal that the world would become a blank slate and could be remade into a peaceful utopia. Everyone clustered beneath the ground shared the hope that they would live long enough to see the sky again. April Fool's Day inherited a new meaning in the year 2023. Detonations wreaked havoc around the globe as humanity faced self-induced annihilation. After hours of destruction, the blasts subsided, and the planet's wars faded to a silent end. There were no armies left on the surface to fight. Inhabitants of shelters that had withstood the attacks began adjusting to their existence beneath the soil. The living celebrated their survival and mourned the loss of the deceased. The few facilities that sheltered the political elite who were instrumental in creating the conflict underwent swift military coups. There could be no hope for a better future under the heel of warlords. Even the most devout soldiers, who had been carefully screened and selected to defend their leaders, could not tolerate another total calamity. Most shelters assigned work duties to their occupants in the hopes of keeping everyone active and sane. Alongside these new responsibilities came an all-inclusive hobby: keeping track of time. Some of the lingering colonists-to-be would mark their walls to note the days, weeks, and months as they passed. They venerated each step down on the long count from 20. The United Nations had approximated that it would take 18 years for the fallout from the latest weapons impact to clear any affected area. Taking into account the presumed targeting, which the combative superpowers would use to inevitably scorch the Earth. To this number, they added another 2 years before announcing their findings to the world, fearing that their prediction was tainted by human error. Not everyone endured until the end of the countdown. Survivors unable to cope with the fate of the world's population or their own newfound surroundings took their own lives during the first months of the long wait. The trauma created by being locked underground manifested in many as fits of rage, and many who succumbed to such moments and harmed others in their community were promptly executed. As these lives were lost, more were brought into the subterranean world. The necessity of repopulation had been hammered into the minds of anyone making the descent, and the meager habitat without sunlight began stifling when spent in solitude. A new generation of children arrived, learning about the vast, mysterious land called outside that they would soon inhabit. Digital communication among shelters became a part of daily life. Friends were forged between continents, often with the promise of someday meeting under the sky. Most inhabitants began using the network to share whatever they knew with others in the hopes of ensuring a brighter future. Languages, skills, and trades were honed. Stories, jokes, and memories were treasured. The day finally came when people could safely fling open the doors of their hidden cages and descend to walk the earth once more. Some were quick to celebrate the eve of their triumphant anniversary, dancing long into the morning and waiting anxiously by the doors. Others were more subdued, hoping to celebrate inwardly once they could walk on the dirt and take a breath of unfiltered air. Humanity opened their doors to a world that was an echo of its former self. The survivors had expected landscapes of wreckage and dust, but instead found themselves engulfed in picturesque jungles. Wind blew gently through colossal trees, and knee-high grass was crushed underfoot as the last inhabitants of the old world began to explore the new. The last remnants of society quickly discovered that their surroundings were full of life. Vegetation had grown over any debris that had fallen and spread during the brief apocalypse. Most animals were now enormous. Giant birds soared in the skies, and many insects had grown to be nearly the size of bricks. Snakes sprouted tiny fins and took to the water. Turtles had abandoned their shells in favor of thick plating coating their whole bodies. Alligators and crocodiles had astounding growth in their hind legs and became towering bipedal predators. For the first time in millennia, humans felt small. There had been a rush around the globe to develop new types of warheads in 2018, when international tensions were rising towards open hostility. While these weapons proved themselves to be effective tools of annihilation, they had hardly been tested before striking their targets. No scientist in 2023 would realize that while humanity had nearly perfected destruction, it had also accidentally created an enormously powerful generator of nuclear mutation. 65 million years prior, a single natural missile had altered the course of the world. Now that synthetic missiles had largely repaired the damage, mankind faced its greatest challenge: rebuilding society in the shadows of giants. This was Cataclysmic Irony by Ethan Hedman. Ethan is a speculative fiction writer from Cutler Bay, Florida, who spends most of his time trying to lure new, compelling stories out of his imagination. See more from Ethan on Instagram. Check our show notes for links. Music is provided by Mads. Learn more about 600 Second Saga, our authors, how to submit your flash fiction, and how to support the podcast in the show notes. This has been Mariah Avix and 600 Second Saga.